So we were reading, it's a couple of pages long and is all, but the beauty and the artistry of mythology is that it doesn't need to explicitly state many things and unpack ideas over several chapters and books. It can capture whole ages in a couple of pages. No, no rhyming intended there at all. But we're introduced into the story of Oisin in Patrick's house by Oisin speaking of the fact that he's drawing stones. He's yoked to stones to draw them, right? So he's essentially subordinated, or he's in a sort of slavish position to Patrick. Okay. What's really fascinating here is Oisin is not just lamenting the fact of the physical labor he has to do or endure even. He is also giving out or opposing or arguing against the level of sustenance that he's getting from Patrick, right? So if you view, I'll come back to that, but Oisin speaks metaphorically, or at least Patrick is taking it as taking a metaphorical reading as a literal one, right? So Oisin is saying, I've had pieces of bread or pieces of a bird that are bigger than the bread you're given, right? This sort of a thing, this poetic imagery, this metaphorical speak, mythological speak, if you will, poetic in nature. And Patrick is taking it literally. And because he takes it literally, as he is, of course, a man of the book, a man of the Bible, a Christian, a Catholic, who takes things literally. That is the mindset, a literalist, right? He renders Oisin's statements as lies. And Oisin, again, if you will, embodying the pre-Christian or the pre-Catholic, pre-Patrick Irish person. He is more prone to poetic thinking, imaginative exposition, if you will, and mythological views of time, of events, of the heart of the people. Next, we have Oisin and a helper, a young boy. And we could view that as Oisin being from the Fianna, of course, so he's a protector of the realm, a protector of the island, a protector of the Irish people, and, of course, a protector of Irish ways, a protector of historical perspective, right? Metaphysical perspective. So he embodies a philosophical worldview, and if you want, because we can juxtapose it with Patrick, a theological worldview, right? So what the world meant, what life meant to the Irish people. And he is coupled here with a young boy, a young aide. And Patrick is obviously gearing towards, I would say, galvanizing the Irish people in opposition to what Patrick, i.e. Rome, had to offer. Because this is not from me, this is from Oisin as well in the stories. Oisin correctly identified Patrick as a Roman, right, with his Roman ways, several times. So Oisin is obviously looking to cultivate something, because he gets the boy to get a set, what would you call it? A set of puppies, a litter of puppies, right? And to throw them against the wall, against the bull hide that has been hung on the wall. The boy does this, and a few times the puppies hit the wall, fall, that's the end of it. But the last one he throws clings to the hide, and using his teeth and his claws to hold on, to persevere, to endure, to climb, to grow, right? To conquer the bull hide on the wall. And Oisin says to the boy, take that puppy and rear it well. What is interesting is that Oisin directs the boy to take the persevering puppy and to rear it well and to drown the rest, right? Which could speak of instilling something tenacious, something with tenacity, and getting rid of what is useless, what is not helpful for the situation, right? Overcoming weaker forms of yourself. And where Oisin and the boy go then, they go to Slieve na Mon, and they see witches on the mount with Slieve na Mon is obviously the hill of the woman, right? Or the woman's hill, the woman's mound, right? Which speaks of goddesses, of furies nearly, right? And these witches of the Sidhe, They have their wheels and they're spinning their wheels, right? Wheels then are symbolic of the god Tyrannus, a Celtic god of the present, right? The god of time, right? Wheels like a face of a clock, like a sail ship, direction, movement, time, right? Presence, present, the past, history, all that sort of a thing, right? And we're looking at the she as well, so the people or the gods or the deities or the tendencies, the worldview, the old ancient worldview that has been supplanted by Patrick. And Oisin raised a rock that was there, and he bade the lad to take from under it three things: a great sounding horn of the Fianna, and a ball of iron they had for throwing, and a very sharp sword. And when Oisin saw those things, he took them in his hands, and he said, "My 1,000 farewells to the day when you were put here." He bade the lad to clean them well then, and when he had done that, he bade him sound a blast on the horn. The boy blows twice. Oisin then takes the horn and blows 3 bursts into the horn. He then asks the boy, "What do you see?" The boy then sees a first wave, a second wave, a third wave of bigger and bigger birds flying and hovering over the valley below. And what we're given here now is a series of numbers or placement positions, numerical placement positions. And anyone familiar with mythology, Irish mythology nearly specifically, will understand or recognize the fact that the stories are replete with numbers. And it can be somewhat off-putting because you have numbers and shape-shifting animals and entities, and taking it literally, you would throw the book out the window and go, that is not, what use is that to us? It's obviously nonsense, right? That would be the perspective that Patrick would take, okay? The literalist perspective. But we're not, Oisin isn't looking at the world that way. These stories aren't speaking of the world in that literalist fashion. Again, we're in the realm of mythology here, where things are like other things that are like other things that are like other things. So something is like another thing instead of something is this. There's a difference between a concrete or declaring a concrete meaning of something and then simply attempting to highlight the likeness between two different things. There's a separation in the previous perspective, and there's an integration and a connection in the latter perspective. So we're given numbers and the placement positions of numerical placement positions. Oisin gives 3 blasts from the horn, 1, 2, 3. The boy sees the first wave, the second wave, the third wave. We're introduced to the 3. If we assume meaning in the numbers given, we could decide to add them together. Between the 3 bursts of the horn, the first, second and third waves over the valley, we can have 3 plus 1 plus 2 plus 3, which equals 9. Let us go for a walk here. Let us hold off on the knee-jerk response to this, where you could easily say, well, you're just pulling that out of the air, right? But let us continue. We'll go for a walk. We're just trying to open up our minds on these things a little bit. Irish mythology is, after all, a collection of the stories and the experience that are in the racial storehouse or the collective unconscious of the Irish psyche, of the Irish people. It is a system. So let us attempt to understand part of the system, in this instance the number 9, by comparison to other aspects of the system. How did these things relate to one another? This was the worldview. This is the so-called pagan worldview, the pre-Christian worldview, where the lens in which we see the world and take in the world is a metaphorical one, a symbolic one. This is built into our language. So we're on good ground here. Cognitive psychology has understood this. The work of George Lakoff emphasizes this, the metaphorical nature in which we speak, in which we communicate ourselves to the world, to others, and being in the world. It is metaphor. In other words, the Irish have presented us with the number 9 The Irish stories have offered up to us in the present day the number 9. So what did the number 9 mean to them, if anything at all, and if we can find any meaning in it? We are returned to the 9 hazels of wisdom that grow beneath the waters in Irish mythology, of which the salmon of knowledge, feeds from the nuts of these hazel trees. So hazel is in a direct relationship with knowledge, with wisdom, with nourishment, which, when we plug it into the context of the Oisin story, we are looking at Oisin, the blowing of the horn, the recognition of the danger involved in Patrick's house, the coming ideology, the coming worldview that is counter to Oisin's worldview, what he has known, right? So the number 9 is offered to us, wisdom is offered, tenacity and courageousness from the puppy, if you remember. So the number 9 was held by the Pythagoreans as the end of a cycle, seeing as it is the last single number in the chain of numbers. It is the end of a cycle, and the end of an age, the end of a particular worldview, perhaps the end of a culture, the end of anything, right? The end also foretells of a new age, a new cycle to follow. And if we continue our path towards correspondences, what is this like? We find we can stumble across the tarot, right? And in the tarot, whose very suits, which are the sword, the cup, the disc or the plate, and the wand or the spear, correspond very well with the ancient treasures of Ireland, which are the sword Fragorach, the answerer, the cauldron, the spear of Lugh, and the stone of destiny, the Leafall. We also find in the tarot, whose cards are numbered, by the way, we find the card number 9, which is the Hermit, which, again, back to the Oisin story, we have this aged wisdom, aged old man, aged wise man, standing atop a hill, looking down on the valley. He's also accompanied by a dog. So is the Hermit card, which is interesting. And in the Hermit card, the meaning involved in that is a man of isolation, greyed hair, experience, standing atop a mountain, a Slieve, the Slieve Naman, the witches and their wheels. He's above that, he stood beyond that. Time and age is passing. He also has with him a dog, as does Oisin. We also see an egg wrapped by a serpent. Is a symbolizing regeneration, fertility, a new age in gestation. And then we are brought again back to the tale of Oisin. As previously stated, let us not forget that Oisin correctly identified Patrick as a Roman and naming him as such. And the shadows or the waves that the young man seen after the bursts of the horn by Oisin were birds. Each successive wave came with a growing size in each of the birds of that wave. And if we remember, the symbol of Rome was the eagle, which is the apex of birds. So the biggest bird in attitude, in its standing amongst the sky, amongst the creatures of the sky. So we have Oisin, the pre-Catholic, pre-Patrick Irish perspective, looking down at the valley as it's been swarmed by these birds, by Rome, by the eagle. Oisin then directed the boy to release the dog, let him loose. And the dog rushed down to the valley then, and he made an attack on one of the birds that was the biggest of all, and it had a shadow like a cloud, and they fought a very fierce fight. But at last Brannog, the dog, made an end of the big bird and lapped its blood. But if he did, madness came on him, and he came rushing back towards Oisin, his jaws open and his eyes like fire. So what we can take from that is that the aspect of Oisin, the Irish people that had to fight in it, went and fought the bird, the eagle, Rome, Patrick, lapped at its blood, ingested some of what Rome had to offer, and lost its way, went mad, came and attacked its own people. The dog came and attacked Oisin and the boy. By ingesting Roman theology, a foreign god, a foreign theology, the Irish people are said to have lost their senses, went mad. Oisin directs the boy to throw the ball of steel, ball of iron at the dog to kill it. But we see that the boy is too scared to fight against the madness that came from the internalizing of Roman theology. It is down to Oisin, the little fawn of the Fianna, who was sworn to defend and protect Ireland, to slay the rabid beast, to neutralize the foreign element, the enemy to the Irish heart, to ingest it, to take in what Patrick's teaching is, learn it, understand it, combat it, overcome it, create a synthesis from the clashing of these two worldviews. Oisin slays the dog by casting the iron ball down the throat of it, killing it. Oisin and the boy then proceed down to the valley where they meet the bird, the biggest bird that was slain by the dog. Oisin uses the sword to cut open the bird, and what he finds in it is a giant round berry and an ivy leaf. And in these stories, when we meet these more magical elements, we should pause over the meanings that were attached to them. And we don't find these meanings by imagining them, or perhaps we do, or perhaps we did. We find them in how they are presented to us in other stories, what they're associated with. Not what they are, but what they're associated with. And the rowan tree is associated with protection from evil spirits, with the other world, with the fairies and the dead, with ancestors. The berries of the rowan tree come in autumn, at the end of the summer, close to the Irish New Year, symbolizing new life as the sun begins to die. The rowan is associated with magic, with divination and with brigade, with poetry, fire, the colour red. Oisin has slayed the Roman madness and has pulled from it the very essence of Irish history and meaning. The ivy leaf of fidelity, as the ivy climbs and clings to the thing that supports it, so too do people when they're loyal. It symbolises immortality and resurrection, for the ivy lives past the deaths of other plants. It's evergreen. The ivy was also linked to Bacchus or Dionysus, and was held as a protection against intoxicating madness. James Joyce chose this symbol to show a loyalty to Parnell and to nationalist ideals. It is a sign in this context of a fidelity to oneself and one's nation. So Oisin takes these symbols, takes the rowan berry, takes the ivy leaf, and goes back to Patrick. We read, "So Oisin turned back then, and went to where Patrick was. And he showed him the quarter of the bird that was bigger than any quarter of a bullock, and the round berry that was bigger than a churning of butter, and the leaf. And you know now, Patrick of the bells, he said, that I told no lie, and it is what had kept us all through our lifetime. Truth that was in our hearts, and strength in our arms, and fulfilment in our tongues. At this Patrick accedes, you told no lie indeed." So here we have Oisin representing and asserting his own people's perspective, the challenged worldview of the Irish, the pre-Christian Irish, or the pre-Catholic Irish. The story then goes on to explain how Oisin loses his sight, and in Patrick's house there are servants who seek to distort reality, to confuse Oisin, to have him not leave again, by attempting to convince him of the dangers of the outside world again, of leaving the sanctuary of Patrick's domain, by stepping outside of the theology that is offered by the Roman Patrick. Oisin understands this, and he comes to learn of it when a serving girl in the house says to Oisin, "Rise up, Oisin, and go out to the white-headed cows, since the cold wind is plucking the trees from the hills." Oisin went out then, and the serving man on his shoulders. But it is what the serving man did. He brought a vessel of water and a birch broom with him, and he was dashing water in Oisin's face, the way he would think it was rain. Deception, confusion. But when they came to the pen where the cattle were, Oisin found the night was quiet, and after that he asked no more news of the weather from the servants. So Oisin, by stepping outside of the influence of Patrick's house and connecting back with nature, cows, the landscape, the things that Oisin and the Fianna valued, the things that the Irish people valued, by plugging back in to the raw reality of the world, of the land, of nature. Oisin sees through the deception and decides that he no longer needs any aid. He no longer needs to have his reality described to him by those who serve Rome.